It is September 13th, 11 o'clock. We're at Larry Green's house in San Francisco. And what I'd like to do is capture what motivated you to do what you do. The world pretty much knows what you do. It's why did you do it? What led to that? And my perspective, I believe the currency of wellness is connection. And your work enhances connection in what ways that fits with your personal interests. And also, just historically, you were the launching pad for me when you were my advisor at Hopkins in, 71, 72.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked up Dunn's book in the bookstore and started reading it. And then I came to you and said, what if we did a noontime wellness seminar? 3 people showed up, but Sigrid Deeds was one of them.
Uh-huh.
So let's start with where you were born, what early experiences you had that led you into where you are.
Yeah. Well, I think the birthplace could have had something to do with it. It's a town within the Los Angeles metropolitan area called Bell, California. And it's been in the news in recent years for a big scandal of city council absconding with city funds. So I try not to associate myself with that history, but it was a modest town, and my family lived around the Los Angeles area during my early years, Reseda, Burbank, Glendale. We moved to southern Oregon and lived in a remote rural area in the mountains. And my parents had a lot of financial ups and downs. And
when did you move? Like, how old were you?
I was probably 11 or so, sixth grade, yeah. So I went to the 6th through the 8th grades in Eagle Point, Oregon. And then moved to Sacramento. Again, my father had ups and downs. He was a skilled laborer in the construction industry, and that just vacillates wildly, as you know, in California and Oregon. And I think I learned to be pretty self-sufficient. My mother was very laissez-faire. My father was absent a lot because of his work that took him on the road. And I think the self-sufficiency is one characteristic that drew me to some of my interests once I got fixed into the health field.
What led you to the health field?
My uncle, the one professional in my extended family was my uncle, who was a dentist. And I was wandering a lot in high school, getting involved with a rough crowd, and my uncle offered me the opportunity to come and live with him for a year. I thought I wanted to be a dentist because he was such a role model.
Where was that?
And that was in Lawton, Oklahoma.
Oh.
So I did my senior year in high school there, and because I had come from California, I was able to be in a more accelerated senior year and just took a couple of college courses that year. So that got me sorting out the things that I really liked. And philosophy was very big on my academic interest hit parade. I'm still groping, though, as I describe this odyssey, for the link to what became my interest in public health. When I decided I didn't want to be a dentist, I think what I was observing was the revolving door, people coming in, getting patched up, going out, and then just coming back.
The Band-Aids.
The Band-Aids, yeah. And I thought, well, what's better than being a dentist? Well, maybe I should be a doctor. And then I decided that's just more of the same. So I thought, better than being a doctor, I should be the boss of doctors. So I went into pre-hospital administration. And at Berkeley, pre-hospital administration was in the School of Public Health, and they had a graduate program in hospital administration, so I thought I had a path
Mm-hmm.
mapped out. But once I started taking courses in public health, I became convinced that that's what I wanted to be in.
Mm.
And the major that I picked, because the courses interested me the most, was health education. And it was the social and behavioral sciences aspect of public health that I decided really interested me most. As I continued at Berkeley through my 3 degrees, and then served on the faculty for 2 years, I became more and more convinced that health education in particular, and a lot of public health in general, was being practiced on a sort of seat-of-the-pants basis.
Mm-hmm.
You discover a problem in community, you do the necessary epidemiological workup of who's got it and where is it concentrated, and you intervene to try to prevent it.
Mm-hmm.
But in the health education side of it, I thought that it was not very well science grounded, and so I really pursued a career of practice-based research that I could say was evaluating programs and feeding the information back into practice and program planning. When I went to Hopkins, I had the opportunity to test the models that I was developing at Berkeley, and I had 2 years in Bangladesh between Berkeley and Hopkins. And there I worked in family planning, so I had a chance to test some of these ideas. And
That was 70 to 72?
No, that was 63 to 65. So it was in the middle of my Berkeley years. It wasn't actually between the two, but it was before I went to Hopkins. But Hopkins gave me the chance then to do very critical randomized controlled trial tests of these models of intervention.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of my career really has been playing out the development of that model, which came to be called the pre-seed proceed model of program planning. It's been through 4 editions of a textbook, and so it's been widely used. About 1,000 to 1,100 published applications of it on my website, and most of my career has been bouncing back and forth from helping people use that model in program planning and evaluation of programs, and serving on national committees and commissions and working in the government to try to facilitate the application. So the chapter where you came into my life was one that in some ways was a bit of a diversion, but it interested me. The whole wellness issue interested me from the standpoint of what are people not getting from public health and medicine that might make all of this work better. So I'll pause there and let you probe as you see fit.
Yeah, well, back to this, to me, organizing principle of connection, which I think it took me 30 years to figure out. Everything I was doing was basically making up for my lack of connection as an infant, and when I got into infant wellness, seeing how radically disconnected Americans are, and you must have seen that in Bangladesh by seeing a culture that is connected and how much happier they are. And even that film Babies, it shows that African babies are the happiest ones of the 4 families they're following, and they're playing in the dirt. Have you seen that film?
No, I haven't.
Pretty awesome. And the Japanese family and the San Francisco family with all their equipment and all their stuff with the kids, and they're not happy. African babies are just happy. It's the connection, you know? It's just the connection, and we've so badly damaged that. I think the DSM is basically a catalog of the various ways that humans have figured out how to try to, or attempts to recreate the connection that aren't very healthy, but they make up for it. And so that's my glasses are all connection filtered.
You're looking through that lens
Yeah,
at a lot of other things.
It does seem to be fundamental, and of course attention is the key human need that isn't met. We need food, warmth, oxygen, water, and connection, or attention, which facilitates the connection. That's how you
Mhm.
know you're connected, is when someone is attending to you and you're attending to them.
Hmm.
Does any of that fit with your
Well,
early experience?
I think as you lay it out, I'm struck that I think that may very well be what drew me to public health and away from medicine
Mm-hmm.
and hospital administration, is the idea of community. And
Yeah.
that's what public health is about, really, is
Mhm.
so as addressing problems of health through community organization, community development. And as I got into the literature on community development, in particular in developing countries, which is
Mhm.
where most of that literature was centered, I think I was drawn to notions of connection,
Mhm.
though that wasn't the term that provided the glue. But I think community, just the term community, and communitarian approaches to problem solution.
Mhm.
The emphasis in the Berkeley program that I studied in through my 3 degrees really was on group dynamics within the community organization. How do you get the right people together to help solve community problems?
Mhm.
And I hated the group dynamics course, frankly. I
So when I took it, Hopkins was horrible.
yes, right, yes. That one was taught by the mental hygiene department.
Oh,
so
really?
The one you took. The one I took was taught by health educators who knew what they were doing and probably knew that they were making some of us very impatient. But that was part of the training, was how to sit still and listen rather than having to be
Yeah.
telling people things. And so that there's probably a connection there
Uh-huh.
to connection. In retrospect, I think the group dynamics training, this one tedious course, has been what I've used more in my career
Mhm.
than any other course I've got there.
It's funny how those things
Mm.
come back to haunt you. Yeah. Well,
A lot of irony in
yeah. Now, I'm curious, after you left Hopkins, you went into the Surgeon General's office.
there. Mm-hmm.
And it was around that time that the huge cessation of smoking happened,
Mm-hmm.
which I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. That was, to me, a miracle,
Mm.
just to be able to fly in airplanes and not be gagging.
Well, the Surgeon General's report that turned it around, smoking had increased inexorably from the beginning of the century when they first learned how to roll cigarettes
Mhm.
and package them, the beginning of the 20th century, right up to 1966. And at that point, it turned around and
Mm.
started coming down. Now, there were a couple of troughs right after during the Great Depression.
Mm-hmm.
Economy was
Right,
clearly
Mhm.
a suppression of smoking for a time. But then it shot back up again into the 50s. There was an article that came out in Reader's Digest in 1954 that talked about the research where they painted nicotine tar on the backs of mice,
Mm-hmm.
and that and the
I remember
connection to
that.
cancer.
Mm-hmm.
That brought it down again briefly.
Little scare
But
tactics.
the
It never
tobacco-
works.
Well, the tobacco industry was very resourceful in
Yeah.
turning it around again. So it
Mm.
continued to go up to 1966 when the first Surgeon General's report came out.
Uh-huh.
And from that point on, it's gone down pretty steadily.
Well, I thought there was like a sudden plummet during the 70s.
Well, the downward slope accelerated during the 70s because that was the period when when EPA and the Surgeon General also came out with the secondhand smoke
Mm-hmm.
findings,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not just your smoking that's killing you, it's other people
Mhm.
smoking around you. And that suddenly gave the public a license to impose more constraint on smokers.
Mm-hmm.
And that really, that denormalized smoking.
Right.
And the changing of social norms was what really accelerated the curve
Mhm.
downward during the period you're remembering.
And now I suspect you had a lot to do with this.
No, I can't claim much credit. What I I was doing when I went into the government on leave of absence from Hopkins in 1979 was working with Michael McGinnis and Julius Richmond, who was the Surgeon General at that time, developing the first Surgeon General's report, and more particularly on my part, the objectives for the nation, 10-year objectives in disease prevention and health, disease prevention and health promotion. And those objectives really gave concreteness to what had been pretty amorphous notions about public health prevention and health promotion. And they've survived 4 decades now. There's been another set of 10-year objectives every decade. Ours were for 1990, then 2000, then 2010, and now there was a new set of objectives for 2020. And that's really guided, it's helped to galvanize and give concreteness to the notion that you can have goals in prevention that apply to whole populations. A lot of evaluation has been centered around those objectives. So, and I spent just 2 years in that office, and then got back to my academic career. And it's been back and forth. It's been a revolving door. A couple of years with the Kaiser Family Foundation, 2 years, 5 years with CDC, and university academic appointments between each of those.
Well, around the same time I met you, I ran into Louis Robbins and got into health risk appraisal, or health hazard appraisal as they called it in those early days. Did you know Louis?
Yeah, I remember his prospective medicine organization, and I got involved in that a little bit myself.
Yeah, I found the big book that they had sitting on the desk. What was my first advisor's name? The operations research guy at Hopkins.
Charles Flagel?
Flagel, yeah. He let me use his desk at the Oakland Kaiser Hospital in an office that he shared with Sidney Garfield, who wasn't coming in much, so I had the place to myself.
Wow.
And here was this book, How to Practice Prospective Medicine. What? I looked at it, big table of numbers, and that was my entree even before wellness. But I quickly saw that scaring people with an HRA didn't get you very far. And I was just thinking, now how does smoking fit in with connection? I hadn't actually thought about that. I believe it's medicating the pain from being disconnected. That so many of us are walking around dealing with this disconnected pain that we don't even recognize it, but all kinds of self-medication from addictions, workaholism is mine. I never found alcohol did anything but put me to sleep, but different substances, self-medications. And unless you get to that underlying thing, I'm not even sure what happened when the smoking cessation was so successful, and why the last bunch of people are so hard to get. I think they're the most depressed ones, and if you take away their antidepressant, you have more trouble.
Yeah.
It just shifts the...
Well, I think the other side of that very coin, I think, is that they are blue-collar workers predominantly who still have a culture of smoking.
Right.
And so the denormalization of smoking, the changing of the social norms for the population as a whole, was largely a middle-class outward phenomenon. And it simply hasn't penetrated where people have very little else to live for. Except a few pleasures in life, and they continue to. And then, of course, there is the nicotine addiction, and that's not easy for a lot of people to get past, especially if they can't afford some of the methods, the successful methods of cessation. So you're probably right. There's probably some underlying psychosocial aspects of connection and so forth in that.
Well, to wrap things up, as we are now elders in our professions, guys with white beards and little hair, hopefully some respect. Where do you see yourself going in the
Well, I think
next few decades?
you've keyed me to this notion of connection, and a lot of what I find myself wanting to do more of with the greater leisure and freedom, liberation from the binds of my profession, is to spend more time with my grandchildren,
Mm-hmm.
my wife, my daughters. I'm also kind of keen to do a little bit more leisure travel and connect with the world,
Mm-hmm.
as it were, because I've traveled a lot in my career, but it's always been hit and run.
Yeah.
You know, I go and give a speech, and or go to a meeting and pontificate, and then get out of town.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my travels, I continue to go and pontificate.
Yeah, you don't seem very retired to me.
But now I've made a practice of staying an extra day or two and just exploring the museums and the culture of the place.